35th chapter, page Kuf Lamed Beis, 35th chapter, Gevruras Hashem. HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodoshim. Hashem says to Moshe, this month is the beginning of all months. Rishon Hu Lochem L'Chodshei Hashana. It should be considered the first of the month for yourselves for the months of the year. The Midrash, he cites the Midrash Rabbah, Mishabocha HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Olomo. When God chose to create the world, Kavado Roshi Chodoshim Vishonim, he set as part of the order of existence months and years. Mishabocha beYaakov Ubonav, when he chose Yaakov and his children to be the future of the objective of creation, that they should be the ones to address the objective of creation, Kavar Rosh Chodesh Shel Gula. Hashem had set into existence the Rosh Chodesh, which ultimately be the redemption. Shebol Nigalu Mimitzrayim. During that month, they will be redeemed from Egypt. Ubo Kibel Yaakov Abrochos Ubasin Ligoyel. And all the brachos that Yaakov received from Hashem emanated from that month. And during that month in the future, they will be redeemed. Ubol non like Yitzchok. Yitzchok was born during the month of Nisan. Ubol Nekar al Gab Mizbeach. The Akedah also took place during Nisan. Ubol Ramaz li Yisrael Shu Rosh Chua. And this is the month that has been alluded to Klal Yisrael, that this is the beginning of the salvation, the ultimate salvation. Shnema Rishnu Lochem L'Chodshei Hashana Adkan. It's the first for yourselves of all the months of the year. Birba said, what is the understanding? Kiruyim Lios Nigolim B'Chodesh Rishon. Why the first month? Why not the second month? He said that the first month should be the month of Geula. So there's something innate in the first that has relevance to redemption. B'Meshu Rishon. V'tamze Yizbar L'Kaman Eitzel Matzo. Shonu Ochlim V'gam Eitzel Holachmo. This is also the reason why we eat matzah, which is also eaten during the month of Nisan, which he will explain regarding halach ma'anyo. Nekach neser achomet shenas barichus hazman. And for this reason, which he hasn't explained, this is the basis for chometz being forbidden, which chometz only comes about as a result of a lengthy period of time. Sheshoa lahachmitz, that you allow it to ferment, to become leavened. Chol inya gula kachoyo. What's gula? It was instantaneous. Kilo hispik betzekas avasein lahachmitz. There wasn't time for the dough of our forefathers to become leavened. Shemizet tireh. So from that itself, it's indicated shekol inya gula mibli hemshech zman. It doesn't extend. Gula doesn't extend over a period of time. It's something which is instantaneous. You know, there's an expression, Yeshua's Hashem keheref ayin. The salvation of God will come about as quick as a blink of an eye. So also, from there it's indicated that it's suddenness. It's sudden. There's no period of time which has to be drawn over a period of time. When it's meant to happen, it happens at that moment. That's what matzah is, and that's what gula is. Well, the fishi Yisrael yotzu b'madregas kedusha elokis. When the Jews were redeemed from Egypt, what were we? We achieved a spiritual, a godly level. Shein shaykh b'zezman. When we speak of something is outside of the realm of time, what's out of the realm of time? Time is limitation. Limitation has to do with physical existence. Something which cannot be quantified by time, that means it has no relevance to the physical existence. It's something which transcends the physical, it's the spiritual realm. Now, what precipitated the Gula? Something which is supernatural. Something that's also out of the context of nature. That means God's hand in creation. Every miracle wasn't just miracle within nature. It was God displaying His what? His domination over nature. So it's God's involvement. Who's God? God, that's spiritual. So something spiritual precipitated a dimension of what? Of spirituality. It's the first moment. If it's the second, it's an hour into the first month. It's the second month of the third month. That means time had to pass for Gula to happen. No. At the very first moment of the year, that month is a month of Gula. What were they told? They were told at the beginning of the month they're leaving on the 15th. Right? 15th. And they have to take the lamb or the goat to slaughter it. They took it 4 days before. But it's Rishon. Rishon means the beginning. He says the first month has greater relevance to Gula. He's saying something that has a certain innate identity is not meant to be dominated by something else. He will explain. Because of the nature of what we're speaking about, it cannot be under someone else's domination. Unintelligent creatures are dominated by the human being. They were created, initially at being creation, that man should control nature, control the animal, control the fish. Man is not meant to be enslaved. What is slavery? It's a predicament. Man is created to be free, exercise choice. To be enslaved, that has no relevance to the natural function of a human being. A human being is not an animal. A human being is not a chattel. So, shibud, the concept of slavery, bondage, is something which is, it's only considered happenstance relative to what the essence of a human being is. You know, you say people. Some people are doctors and scientists and farmers, but that's all within the realm of the ability, of the endowment of the person, what he's capable of doing. But that person is the one who has relevance to that. But a person is meant to be an animal. A person is not meant to be an animal. A chattel, what's a chattel? Chattel is you're an object. A human being is not an object. So therefore, shibud is mikre. He's saying something like this. What is a human being meant to be? A human being. What does mikre mean? Mikre means something happened. What is the connotation of happened? After. The human being is rishon. Something happened which changed its predicament. That's a happening. That's happenstance. That's mikra. So when you revert back to who you are as a human being, what is that? How do you express that? Rishon. Mashe mikra mu'ucher. Mikra is something exists, now something happens to that. That's something which is later. So if they're meant to be, so a human being is meant to be freed. So if you're meant to be freed, to re-enter, to be self-independent, which month should that be? You're returning back to the beginning, to who you should be. So where are you going back to? To the beginning. What's the beginning? Beginning is Rishon. Therefore, when should it manifest itself? Chodesh Rishon, which connotes the getting back. Ki zeh davar rishon sheyeh nimtza b'rishus atzmo. Ki zeh mitzad etzem hanimtzo shu rishon, because this has to do with the innateness of what we are. Lama lamasha b'mikra. V'hovin advar me'elo ma'od. He's something that has to be understood very much. Came ikar godel ma'od, because this is a fundamental principle in understanding what is and what's not. It's phenomenal, profound. Just thinking, it's a little that you have to. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos, "Ein lecha ben chorel misha osik b'Torah." Okay, so what is a ben chorin in its truest sense? That means your life does not dictate you, but you control your life. You dictate your life. Your life does not dictate you, your essence. How do you achieve that? By studying Torah, by becoming spiritualized. Barasi Yitzhara, Barasi Lo Torah Tavna. The Torah is the antidote to that. So what's the essence of the person? What's really getting back to yourself when you get to the Torah? Now, what month was the Torah given? In Sivan. That's the third month. Right? So, seemingly, the Torah should have been given in Nisan. Right? Because true Geula is what? Ein lucha ben choren lo shebi sok beTorah. Right? No, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have worked it out. It should have happened then, to bring about this concept. The answer is, the question really is a mistake. When we became a Klal Yisrael in the third month, we became that then. See, the Rishon is we're getting back to who we are. This is pre-Sinai. Pre-Sinai, what were we? We were Nohites. Post-Sinai, we became Bnei Yisrael. So what is the human being meant to be? Committed to the Shem Mitzvah Bnei Noach. To understand and recognize who God is. Deities have no value. God is the omnipotent, the supreme being. That's what we're supposed to be and understand and function within that context. Torah has no relevance to our context at that point. Because we're Noahites. We may be Noahites with greater potential, but that's not going back. We're not going back to who we are. Chodesh HaShlishi, we became. You understand? We became in the third month. We became the Am Hashem. It's not something we were going back to becoming. Once Sinai happens, and now let's say we go astray, now we could talk about getting back to what Sinai offered us. But pre-Sinai, you can't say Torah is going back. We're not going back to Torah. We never had Torah. Right? That's why the question is not a question. But he says, this fundamental, Hovin Advar Me'ela Ma'od. You must understand and appreciate this understanding to a great degree. The only thing that has relevance to Gula is Rishon. So now the question is, so why didn't the Gula take place on Rosh Chodesh? It's Rishon. Let be the first day. The answer is the day, it says, when God created, we're going to measure, created the world, he set months in place and years in place. Doesn't say he set days in place. The world is made up of months and years. The day is, there's night and there's day. But in terms of the entity of time, it's months and years. So it's the first month. So it does not have to be the first moment of the first month. The month itself, as a period of time, we see it as one entity. So it's during that entity which is called first. That connotes you're going back to the beginning. Okay? Mikra is something that happens. An event takes place. We say in the Agora, in terms of the mitzvah of Sipit Sisram, Yochel Mirosh Chodesh. Maybe the obligation of discussing the bondage and the redemption should be already from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh. Bavur Zeh, right? It's later, maybe even on the 14th. No, when the Matzah Mor Menochem Lefonov, on the 15th, when actually the Gula took place. It's not the month which precipitated the Gula, but it's actually the Gula itself. We're just thinking that until Makos Bechoros, which was the 10th, what did that indicate? What did the 10th plague indicate? It says, we find certain mitzvahs where the Torah says, Asher, it's juxtaposed, Asher Otzisim Eschem Eretz Yisrael. What are they? For instance, tzitzis, which has to do with chelis. Why? Because there's a certain dye which almost, once you dye the wool with this type of dye, you cannot differentiate between that and chelis. It's called kol elon. It's a dye which mimics, and it's impossible to be able to discern between the two of them. So the chelis is from the blood of a certain, whatever it is, a certain snail which comes out of the sea, which its blood is this color, whatever the chelis is. An argument, is it blue, is it green, or whatever it is. So the tribe which received that portion with the chelis, they said, but what about you can have all these forgeries? They're going to undermine our livelihood. Hashem says, as I discern between the seed of the firstborn and non-firstborn, during Max Bechoros, I will discern between that and what's the real chelis or not, and it's not going to happen. You will not incur a financial loss. Also, certain things, tzitzis, as I weights and measures, certain things, ribbis, different things, as I discerned. It seems to be all the other things you say, you attribute it to a malach. This is aniva lo malach. Makas Bechoros was aniva. A malach couldn't do the Makas Bechoros. The only one who was able to make that discernment is only Hashem. It's interesting. Gemara tells us in Tainus that the 3 keys that were never given over to an angel. God never released it to an angel. One of the keys is conception. Mafteach of hiroyon, of conception, pregnancy, was never given over. So if it was never given over, that means that a malach doesn't have that ability to discern between what the Bechor, the seed of a firstborn, and the seed of not a firstborn. So it's the 10th plague which actually showed who Hashem is. Not only does he dominate all realms of existence, terrestrial, atmospheric, and celestial, as we discussed in the Maral, which displayed itself through the various 9 of the Makos, the 10th was the ultimate. That was the ultimate, okay? That happened on the 15th. The midnight of the 15th, that's what had happened. So that was the Geula. Everything else evolved to bring about the Geula, as we discussed. 9 are units of 1. Once it becomes 10, it becomes 1 unit, which is 1 entity, which each one complements the other. So when you have 9, each one doesn't have to be related, doesn't have to complement the other. But when you get to 10, 10 becomes 1 entity. So when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu become that entity, the ultimate entity? On the 15th, midnight of 15th, when the firstborn were killed in Mitzrayim. Aniva lo malach. That's when it happened. That's when he became, it was indicated he's the Rishon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was established as the Rishon. Hu Rishon Hu Achron was when? That was on the 15th, midnight. Now that we became, he redeemed us. So when do we become the Rishon? To indicate Geula. To be who we should be. On the 15th. Because who are we? We are connected to the Rishon. And when did Hashem establish, of course, his essence is always Rishon. Everything emanates from, but in terms of displaying his Rishon to all existence, that was on the 15th. So the month is Rishon, but it was on the 15th. That's when he displayed it. Okay? We'll talk about this. Dabrel kol adasbnei Yisrael ba'asol chodesh. Speak to the congregation of Yisrael on the 10th of the month. This is Mishchu Chulachem. You should take the goat, the sheep, sell the Beisovos, the sheep per household, and so on and so forth. Pishur Azal, Shoya Dibur Be'echad L'chodesh, he says, they were already instructed on the Rosh Chodesh to take the Korban Pesach. Valakicha, but the actual purchasing, the acquisition of the lamb, the sheep, or the goat, Besal L'chodesh. Vashchita b'Yudalid, and the slaughtering was on the 14th. V'dav zeh davka Pesach Mitzrayim, tziva l'lekicho b'Yud b'Chodesh. That was only when we were in Egypt. Let's see, the subsequent years, whenever we did Korban Pesach, you could have bought the Korban Pesach, you purchased it, Erev. As long as you had it on the 14th, it's fine. You didn't have to buy it. There's only the first Pesach, which we weren't even, this allowed the transition to take place. Through the Korban Pesach, that had to be taken 4 days prior, or including, to the 14th. T'chsiv b'Sol HaChodesh, Hazer, Ve'im Pesach Doros Mikro b'Sol HaChodesh. But the Pesach that would be brought in future generations is not purchased on the 10th. It's not purchased on the 10th. U'pirsha tam b'mechilta. Why? Why that particular Pesach, we have to take it 4 days before it was slaughtered, and in the future not? Ramashi Omer b'nei ma'higdim l'kichoso l'shchitoso. Why that year did the purchasing have to take place 4 days before the slaughtering? This famous Chazal. God came to redeem us. We had no worthiness. They had no mitzvahs for them to engage in, to participate in, so he should redeem them as a result of doing those mitzvahs. He gave us 2 mitzvahs. Mitzvahs Pesach and Mitzvahs Milah. So what do we do for 4 days with the Pesach? I mean, the slaughtering is the 4th. How long does it take to purchase? It takes a moment. But you had to purchase an animal that qualifies to become, it couldn't be blemished. That means they had to examine it. They had to examine it for 4 days to make sure that it should not be blemished. Even though you could examine it in a moment. But God says, I want you to be involved in all aspects of this mitzvah until you actually slaughter it. It's the hisaskus. It's the involvement in the mitzvah. That itself is a schus that you should have merit to be redeemed. V'magamis b'dam brischo shalachti asirecho. It says in the pasuk, through the blood of the covenant, I've released your prisoners. Asirecho, those who the imprisoned. Adkan, that's the mechilta. It's interesting. What's told over a story, or a Baruch Ber Leibowitz, Zeichat Tzaddik Brocha, was the Kamenetz of Rosh Yeshiva. It was a yeshiva in Europe called Kamenetz. And Rav Baruch Ber was the primary student of Rav Chaim Brisker, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. And he had a phenomenal mind. And before he would give his public lecture, he would spend hours preparing it and really working it from the source all the way up to the point, the most advanced level that he would offer the shir, the lecture, the Torah lecture, the Talmud lecture. And so people said, he says, what he comes upon is phenomenal, deep, broad, but because he invests so much time in it, and he works on it. So he was saying a shir, public shir in the yeshiva, and he had many exceptional students who had phenomenal minds, geniuses. And a person asks him a question in the shir, middle of, whatever, they had a few hundred students there, And it seemed to be the question refuted the basis for the whole lecture, the whole shiur. He stops for a moment, and in an instant he gives an answer which showed his genius. It was like lightning, like a lightning bolt. The students never saw him display this kind of genius. I mean, his genius was hidden because he applied himself to such a degree when he studied that they attributed that he was able to come upon all this insight and understanding because of his level of application. But here, in a moment, it's not something he worked on. He asked the question, instantaneous, like a lightning bolt. Something which it even amazed the greatest geniuses. Okay? And it became the talk of the yeshiva. 2 days later, Baruch Ber Leibowitz comes over to the student to ask the question. He says, remember the question he asked? I want to explain it to you. And he gives him the exact same answer. The exact same answer that he said, literally instantaneous during when he asked the question initially. And he hears it. It's exactly verbatim the same answer. So the student asks his Rebbe, he says, I don't understand. The Rebbe already answered the question. When I asked it, he answered it. So what you're telling me now, or you're telling me anything different than what you originally told me? Maybe I'm missing something. He says, no. What I'm telling you, exactly what I told you then. But I want to tell you the difference between what I'm saying now, what then. He says, I relearned it. And I applied myself. And I came up with the same understanding through my application and perseverance of the Torah. It's a different, the end result, although it's the same answer, it's a different value. It's a different value. I'll give you an example. Lahavdil elef abdolas. You have a hope diamond. And a person who's been in the field 50, 60 years, and he's the expert. And a person like that could appreciate the uniqueness of every aspect of the diamond. The shape, the color, the clarity, everything. He looks at it, can't take his eyes off of it. Another person who just graduated gemology school, he could also appreciate, he could understand its value. What does he do? He looks at it. One glance, okay, I see its value. What's the difference between these two people? A person who saw the full range of what is precious and what's not precious, this is something which is amazing. He can't take his eyes off of it. The other person, I see its value, okay. I'm ready to see the next one. When a person applies himself to Torah, it's just understanding. It's the approach. To what degree do you revere and esteem it? I get the answer. But the question is, to what degree does it resonate? To what degree do I revere it? To what degree do I esteem it? It affects you differently. It's the effect. It's the end result. The Gemara tells us that there was a man, his name was Doeg Adomi. Doeg Adomi was the head of the Sanhedrin in the time of Shalom Melech, King Saul. And he despised David HaMelech. He could not tolerate David. His level of jealousy was rabid. Rabid. And ultimately, we know that Shaul killed the city Ir Nov Kohanim. And Doeg Adomi was responsible for it. Why? Because he went and he informed Shaul that they harbored David and his men when they were fugitives. So he gave the order, they have to be destroyed. He was responsible for this. But what was the basis for the envy? And he spoke Lashon Hara about David to Shaul. He literally put fuel on the fire. He ignited the whole conflagration between David and his father-in-law. This was dope. But what was the basis for the jealousy? Why was he called Doeg Adomi? Adomi means he was an Edomite. But he wasn't. He was a Jew. It says because he was a young man, and to be a member of the Sanhedrin, you had to be one of the most advanced Torah sages of the Jewish people. To achieve that level of expertise and proficiency, you're basically an older person. Adomi was a young man. And despite his young age, he surpassed all of them. And his genius was at such a level that they would blush in his presence. So therefore, it was Doeg, the one who caused them to blush, to turn crimson. Doeg Adomi. He'd say, with such genius, whatever you applied to yourself to, you'd always come upon the truth in Torah. Didn't always work that way. David did not have the genius of Doeg. But every ruling that David gave was always absolutely truth. He always came upon the truth. He couldn't deal with it. Here, I'm the one of a kind of genius, and I can't come upon truth. He comes upon truth. Could not tolerate it. Therefore, he was bent to destroy David in the worst way, even if it meant taking down the Klal Yisrael. Didn't make a difference. That's Doeg Adomi. So, but what determines if you come upon truth? Because I give you a lightning bolt answer. That's genius. That's an answer here. But to see the full picture, that means you have to connect at a different level. That's connecting on a spiritual level. To connect on a spiritual level, to what degree do you revere the Torah? That's going to be indicated through your application. What are you investing? If you invest and you apply yourself, it's not, I'm committed to study 2 sides of a page of Talmud, 2 folios of Talmud a day. And because I have a genius mind, I could do it in 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I'm on to something else. I've studied set aside my designated amount. That's what it is. So if in 10 minutes you do that, so do 6 times that in 60 minutes. But that's my commitment. What means that's commitment? So what, you committed to the knowledge, or you committed to studying Torah? What are you committed to? Well, these other people, they don't have my mind. They're busy for an hour, 2 hours, which I could do in 5 minutes. Understand? But that's genius. That's unrelated. But what does that indicate? You don't sufficiently value and revere what I've given you. This is an infinite gift. I saw something from Rav Aaron Kotler, Zecher Tzaddik Lebrocha. Moshe Rabbeinu says in the Zos HaBrocha, Eish Das Lamo. Eish, the fire of Das. What's Das? Religion. So Das is mitzvos and Torah. Now, this is just to appreciate what he says. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos that when Moshe ascended to heaven to receive the Torah, the Malachim, the angels, came to God and says, what are you giving it to mankind? His fickleness. He's not worth mentioning even. What relevance does he have to such a holy entity? Allow your splendor to remain in heaven. The angels wanted the Torah. And what's even the consideration? The laws, dietary laws in Torah. An angel has relevance to dietary laws, to putting on tefillin, right, to observing Shabbos. They have no relevance to it. So what is even the consideration? Right? But they wanted it. So the answer is the way it's explained. When a person puts on tefillin, what is tefillin? It activates endless spiritual forces and creates spiritual worlds. But how? Because this itself is only symbolic of something which is unfathomable. Except how do we activate it? God gave us a mechanism called tefillin, dietary laws, sukkah, lulav, or Shabbos to be able. But what are we doing? Really, we're only pushing buttons. The laws of damages. An ox gores a cow. Laws of damages. Laws of responsibility. Laws of liability. Limited liability. Unlimited liability. Contracts. Marriage. Divorce. What is it all about? It's only cloaked in that. But what is it? It's something other than that. So, what is Torah Eish? Could a person grasp fire? You'll be incinerated. So what did God give us? He gave us the mitzvos. Through the mitzvos, we have relevance to the fire. It's Eish Das. The fire manifests itself in what? In mitzvahs and Torah. But when you study the Torah, what are you really doing? You're touching upon things that even the angels cannot fathom. Because the Torah, in terms of what its essence is, it's infinite. It's God's wisdom. So that's the understanding. A person who applies himself, it's not only how do you come upon the truth of Torah? It's based on your own spiritualization. It's your approach. To what degree do you revere it? Understanding is, because it's not only understanding this, it's what you're activating. If a person does a mitzvah lishma, does the same mitzvah shalom lishma. He did it perfectly, but with an ulterior motive. Does it generate the same energy, spiritual energy? No. But I did the mitzvah. The answer to mitzvah itself is only a means to an end. It's only a symbol, which the symbol, if you utilize in a certain context, it affects, otherwise doesn't affect. That's all it is. So it says Hashem gave us Pesach already to purchase it on the 10th. That's his askus for mitzvah. When do we actually fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach? The purchasing is what we call the hechsher mitzvah. That's to facilitate the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the slaughtering. But that's his askus. We're involved. We're approaching something which is of monumental value. We're going to sever our relationship with idolatry, with the sheep, with the goat, which represents the deity of Egypt. It's like a person prepares for a wedding. They're busy with it for a month before. Right? What do you visit? What do you mean? I'm marrying off my only child. You know what this is? This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. But you know, there's a service. They can bring everything instantaneous on the day of the wedding. That's not what it's about. But this is my only child. Child I love more than anything. There's a preparation. So the preparing and being focused and only involved with that tells you the relationship with the child and what you're preparing for, and the meaningfulness of that event. Pirush. How will we redeem? Through signs and miracles. A person who's truly physical. What a physical being which functions within limitation, what relevance does he have to have something which is supernatural, what's out of the realm of nature? Here, it's phenomenal. Why did we have relevance to miracles? If you're a physical being, why did we merit miracles? But if who we are, we're attached, and we have that special relationship with the ultimate, which has no relevance to physicality, which is God himself. So what is our essence? Our essence is him. So if that's the case, we're not limited to limitation. So we have no relevance to the natural. So how do you merit? How do you extricate yourself from the physical to merit the ultimate redemption? You have to really establish a physical profile, a spiritual profile. How do you establish that spiritual attachment? Through godly mitzvos. Now the question is, I always ask, he could have given a more simple mitzvah. Tzitzis. Some other mitzvah. Why did it have to be specifically Dam Pesach, Dam Milo? So simply, it's very simple. Well, you're pagans. You have to establish yourself as non-pagans. How do you do that? The Gemara tells us in certain locations, Sanhedrin, a person's a gambler. Gambler. He's disqualified as a witness. Person comes to court, he says, I have remorse, I do tshuva, I will not gamble again. The court says, how do we know you're sincere and serious? He has to bring his gambling chips and his dice, and we destroy them, and he has to destroy them. I mean, all his gambling paraphernalia, he has to destroy. Now we know you're serious. He has weights and measures which were dishonest. Destroy the whole operation. Now we'll talk about. Now you're about tshuva. So how do we show that we were no longer pagans? Let's see you slaughter your deity. You could slaughter a deity, it tells me who you are. You can't? Well, I believe in God. I pledge allegiance. It's not enough pledging. V'davka dam pesach dam milo ki rotz kadosh baruch hu legal Yisrael mi beinu umos ulekarvim elov. He wanted to redeem us, to extricate us from among the nations, and to bring them close to Him. Lo Yisrael ruyim elzeh Moshe Amru Haim Zal. They said, who are we? What are we? We're slaves. We're pagans. Kach noslam shtei mitzvos elu dam pes dam milo hasoras haorlo shupchisus ugnus odom. Hear this? It shows a deficiency and a gnus. It's genaik. It shows a certain inferiority of the human being. Vein dober gnus upchisus kmo orlo. Hamavdu bin Hashem bin Odom. If you remember, with the Rechaim HaKadosh, he cited a Zohar. When Odom was created, he was created without a foreskin. What was the foreskin consequence? That's a consequence of the evil of the Eitz Hadas. So what created that barrier between Odom and God? It was the evil. How did that evil manifest itself? That's that foreskin. So there's nothing which doesn't allow the relationship more than that foreskin. The foreskin has to be removed. You want to be attached to the ultimate of what's spiritual, you have to circumcise yourself. Not because we said, well, it's the original covenant, but that's why it was the original covenant. It was the original covenant because that's how you bring that about. He definitely will serve him. You're serving him. But to have this handicap, this blemish, that's not considered proper service. This is really gets you through the door. Now, the Ramak, Ramush Gevruras, says that a person can be an exceptional tzaddik, but you may have to go to Gehenna. Why? You know, the Gemara tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't overlook any infraction. You do tshuva, that you're fully rehabilitated. But if you have an infraction which wasn't addressed, you have to be purged. What's purging? Spiritual purging is Gehenna. He says, why? He says, could you imagine you have a beautiful garment that every thread is made up of the most precious gold, studded with diamonds. But the garment has a blotch of uncleanliness on it. Could you come before the king with that blotch? It's inappropriate. And it has a stench. It's definitely inappropriate. It's not only visually, it has a stench. So what do you have to do? You have to somehow remove that blotch of uncleanliness. There's a process, whatever the laundry process is. So a person has any degree of sin, although you're elevated and exalted, but you haven't bathed in 29 years. How do you come before the king? Well, but my features are perfect. It's irrelevant what the perfect, but you're not in a setting, in a context that it's respect to come before the king. So even that person has to go to Gehenna. He has to be purged. The Dam Pesel Namila, we talk about, this is the overall profile of the human being. What was the barrier? You know, a person says, you know, I'm going to bathe in your pool in a wetsuit. But I want you to appreciate the feel of the water. The water is therapeutic. It doesn't touch your skin. Right? You're wearing a wetsuit. If you have that orlo, you understand? Well, we'll have an arm's length of relationship. God says that, but that's not what my people is all about. Arm's length doesn't make it. Therefore, the first thing you have to do is remove that foreskin. You have to go and you have to slaughter that animal to bring it as a korban, which creates that closeness between the Jew and God. See, right now he's not focusing on the species. He's speaking about Pesach as a korban, as a sacrifice. Vodish leforish, kidam milo derachim aleim. The reason why God wants the blood of the milah, this evokes mercy. Ki milo nemar ki olayach haragdu kol hayom, fichab dam milo hoyim rachim aleim. Saying something phenomenal. He's saying, what does blood represent? Sacrifice. I'm willing to die for you. Olecha haragnu kol hayom. We die for you every day. A person is born naturally uncircumcised. I should circumcise myself. To undergo this pain and mutilation. Hashem says, we must circumcise himself. You say we die, we die. It's irrelevant within the human rational context. It seems to be mutilation. It seems to be more barbaric. It's irrelevant. What happened with Oner Mash and Eshkol and Mamre? It says Hashem appeared to Avram after Elone Mamre, because he says he consulted with the three of them. They were his compatriots, and he went to the first two. Should I circumcise himself? He said, you realize you're going to have a problem. But when did he circumcise himself? It's his Bet Samiyom was in broad daylight. So nobody could say, well, if we would have known, we wouldn't have allowed you to do it. We don't accept such barbaric practices in our society. Avram says, you may see it as barbaric, but to me it's irrelevant. What's humane, what's rational, what's responsible? Whatever God dictates. Whatever God dictates. That's interesting. They talk about ritual slaughter being inhumane. Yeah, but they eat people alive. That's not, that is humane. Decapitation of people and children by the thousands, that's humane. But ritual slaughter, that's inhumane. You understand? What Hashem says is inhumane. But see, that's in the context of understanding how a human being behaves, like a predator animal. You know, when a lion kills its prey, it doesn't do ritual slaughter. So therefore that's inhumane, because what's humane? Humane is animalistic. That's why they can't tolerate it. Because what does it represent? It represents the spiritual. Anything that's within the physical, they could tolerate that, because that is their essence. But something which is spiritual, there's a story mentioned in a certain book that after the war, the DP camps, so the Jews needed kosher food. And Eisenhower was very accommodating. And they asked that they should set up ritual slaughter in the slaughterhouses in Germany. So they came to so Eisenhower gave the order to go to the head of the slaughterhouse, who was a German. Whether he was a Nazi or not, many of them went into hiding. And he says, we're going to set up a section for ritual slaughter. We're going to have Jewish ritual slaughters go in, and they're going to slaughter. In the concentration camp, you know, when the Nazis fled, they killed as many Jews as they could. The bodies were piled 8 feet high. The bodies were still warm. That's how recent they committed the genocide. So the head of the slaughterhouse, the owner, says, that's inhumane. Here? How do we call you allowed? That's inhumane. So Eisenhower looks at this man and says, he was ready to tear him apart with his hands. He says, yeah, bodies piled 8 feet high. The bodies are still warm. That's humane, and this is inhumane. He says, they will slaughter in this slaughterhouse. You understand what we're talking about? The world could see things which are mind-shattering. No problem. Ritual slaughter. Switzerland, World Court, The Hague. They'll take the Jews to whatever it is, you know. World war crimes. But shechita, that's inhumane. The rest of the world, it's not a problem. To be continued.